Act 2 of Doll's House. It opens up with the nurse talking to Nora. Now, this is the same nurse that actually raised Nora, so you get a little bit of background information that Nora didn't actually have her mother around. And so it's, I think the mother may have died, but it's not real clear. But most likely, if she didn't have her mother, that's probably what happened. And there's a conversation that kind of foreshadows when Nora asks the nurse, first of all, do you think the children would be okay without their mother? And the nurse says, well, you know, children are resilient. And she says, well, what about like if I was gone forever? And then she asks her, would you take care of them? Would you be there? And so you kind of already see that Nora, and at this point she doesn't, I don't think that Ibsen's planning on her abandonment. Nobody sees that she's just going to leave. But there is, I think there was going to be another alternative ending where she was going to kill herself. But at any rate, so you see early in the play, it could have been either one that she was thinking about. However Ibsen was going to, at this point, decide to end it. And so then Christine comes in, and Christine understands that she's been hiding something from her about this whole loan. Now, she suspects that it's Dr. Rank who gave her the money, because she was joking about how nice it would be just for some man to, you know, support you, and having that kind of, I guess, sugar daddy is what we used to call it. I don't know. But the thing is, that would have never crossed her mind. When she brings up Dr. Rank, she's quite surprised, because she's like, no, I wouldn't do something like that. And Linda says to her, now, Nora, you're still very much a child. And notice everyone thinks that she is a child. And she's not. She's actually very smart in many ways, and is trying, at least wants to know who she is. And by the end, you start to see that she wants to be herself, whoever that is. She doesn't know who it is. So there's an intimate conversation then that she has with Dr. Rank. And now remember, Dr. Rank is the one that was saying Krogstad was such a morally diseased person. Well, it's kind of obvious he's only friends with him so he can see his buddy's wife. So, I mean, so the question of morality in this play, I think that's it. Ibsen's way of being very ironic through it is because depending on what it is, it's, you know, it's a lot of gray areas. There's not just a black and white, right or wrong. It kind of depends on the perspective, because and on the surface it looks like it's wrong for Dr. Rank to come over there and talk to Nora. And of course she shows him her stockings and says they're flesh colored, and he gets all excited about that, and he's thinking about the dance that she's going to do, and she teases him a little bit. I think even says she's going to dance for him. But the thing that comes out the most to me in this scene is that with Dr. Rank, she's completely herself. And I think she feels close to him because she feels like she can be comfortable with him. And he, in a juxtaposition to her husband, he treats her like a woman rather than a child. And so I think romantically that there might be a little bit of an attachment there that she wants as a friend. And then of course he finds, since he is basically saying he's going to die soon, he wants to tell her that he loves her, and that just kind of spoils the moment for her, because she doesn't want another husband figure. I mean, she even says, she tries to explain it to him that it's because you don't because like with Turvold, it was so much like being with my dad. And if you're married to someone who doesn't let you control money, and you have to ask for permission about everything that you do, then how is it growing? How are you becoming a woman? You're just becoming an extended part of what you were when you were a child at home. And so going back to, a doll's house, this is part of it. There has to be like that childlike feeling that I'm only here is your toy, and the children are just kind of an extension of that household. And so we'll get into the last scene with them, but I want to say something about realism. This is a type of realist play, and Death of a Salesman is another one. And if you think about the popularity of realism, it's not people want to be entertained, right? And they are going to talk about, instead of superheroes and action and things like what we would find entertaining today, is kind of like what they found entertaining in Shakespeare's time. They wanted violence and things like that. So getting into somebody's living room, and what we would consider probably a drama, having a serious conversation, it doesn't seem very exciting. But psychologically, just like with this conversation, if you reread it between Nora and Dr. Rank, there's a lot going on there that is revealing about human nature and about us. And there's a lot more analysis that you can do with that kind of story, just like we've done, in talking about, for instance, the sins of the father. When Nora is talking to Linda, she brings up her father. And in the beginning, Turvold brings up her father when he's accusing her of being a spendthrift, and says, well, you can't help it, you're just like your father. On the other hand, Linda kind of says it as a compliment, is, of course, the household would be perfect, like your father. And so you get the idea that maybe the father was kind of extravagant in some ways. But I don't know that he was a bad man. There's hints that he had a bad reputation, but who knows what that could have been at that time, as far as what they looked at as having a good reputation. So you see the sins of the father coming in, and what's, again, ironic is that right after Linda says she's like the father, she brings up Dr. Rank. And the reason why Nora explains that he's dying of consumption, which is actually like syphilis, that he inherited from his dad, carried down from his dad. And Nora explains it as Dr. Rank's father having these excesses, and it's very polite society, they're not going to get into details here, but you kind of understand what's going on with what happened to Dr. Rank has to pay for the sins that his father did. And I guess when I think about that, I think, part of it is the circumstances that we're born into. And when we think that everybody has the same opportunity, to a certain extent, that's true depending on where you live and what opportunities there are. But there's other things that we're born with that even in this kind of society would be seen as some kind of moral flaw, when it's really like it's social class. I mean, they really look down at people who were in the lower class as lesser human beings. And I think sometimes people still do that to a certain extent, but you have to remember where, someone who's born extremely wealthy, they didn't do anything to gain that respect, but it's there, more often than not, it's there. So, when Turvold is talking about Krogstad and his moral failings, he said, I might have overlooked it, but he tells her about they were once friends, and he said, I can tell you plainly we were on intimate terms with one another. But this tactless fellow lays no restraint on himself when other people are present. On the contrary, he thinks it gives him the right to adopt a familiar tone with me. And every minute it is, I say, Helmer, old fellow, and that sort of thing. And that's what I was saying before, he calls him by his Christian name. And Nora says, in so many words, but that's so silly. And this really bothers him because she's the one that's supposed to be frivolous. She's the one that's supposed to be silly. But there's a little bit of a reversal when he's talking about something that's so petty. And really, when all you do really is think about things in terms of law and order and society, you're going to be petty, and you're going to miss the forest for the trees. And so she's above that, you know? I mean, she's intellectually right now, she is at a higher level than he is, and her emotional intelligence. And if he sees that, and that undermines him as a man, then of course it's going to make him more upset. So he does get upset with her, especially because she says that's narrow-minded. And so he gets upset about that. And then notice that he says at the end of that conversation, I can forgive the anxiety you were in, although really it is an insult to me. And what she's asking him to do is to basically just take her word for it and just say, I trust you. And okay, if you really think it's going to be that important, then I won't open the letter, I won't do that. But he won't. He'll just say, it always goes back to him. And you see the last conversation too. It always goes back to him that I can forgive you. But he's the one that should be asking for forgiveness, right? And in a way, he's the one that is who's acting more childish between the two. Okay, so another thing that Linda said. So Linda is going to go after she hears about what Krogstad is kind of blackmailing her. Then she says that she's going to go talk to him. And Nora says, this is really no use. And she said, oh yeah, there was a time when he would have done anything for me. And so again, you kind of have that power struggle between she can use her attractiveness or whatever it is that she has, which is kind of showing men as being weaker in a way. When it really comes down to, if a woman can control you just because you're attracted to her, that doesn't happen like the other way around very often. That's more of a male weakness. And women, for I don't know, probably ever, have known how to take advantage of that weakness. So we're not dumb. They've been doing this for a long time. And so she does that, and of course Krogstad changes his mind and wants to do the right thing, which is another reason why I just don't see him as a villain, never really have. Okay, so when she practices the tarantella with her husband, I think this is a very significant moment in the play because she's dancing. First of all, the dance is actually supposed to be kind of a hysteria, I guess after a tarantula bite or something like that. So it's supposed to be a little bit hysterical. And women, of course, were seen as hysterical. And so, but I think that what frees her during this moment when she starts really dancing wildly and for herself is that she has a moment of accepting the truth. And she accepts the worst possible thing. Like anytime that you're worried about something, you should always say, well, what is the worst possible thing? And the worst possible thing is not something she can't handle. She's already accepted it. And in a way, it's actually kind of intriguing to her. She probably doesn't want to stop it at this point, if there is a way to change things. She does still hang on to an idea that there might be this miracle. Never says what it is, but I think that the miracle is that Turvold would just take the blame and man up. And it doesn't happen. So, you know, and do something selfless. Like maybe do something like a woman would do. And it doesn't happen. But anyway, so you can see through this dance, he doesn't like it that she's getting wild. He wants her controlled. He's taught her the moves. And it's his idea for her to do this dance, which I'll get into Act 3 because it's kind of creepy. But as he watches her, that's a good part. So